tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison built that will ever shut me up.
This is America's Voice Live.
And welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurley.
The pulse of the people.
We need somebody that's going to hear the people's voice.
The truth the mainstream won't touch.
This guy is, by definition, a globalist.
And the stories that matter.
Rav's own Ben Berquam.
Right up over this hill, we got one cartel.
I see him.
Live.
Breaking news right now here on Real America's Voice.
Unfiltered.
These people are domestic terrorists.
And unapologetic.
We're here to take a stand for God and country. Does feel good, doesn't it?
America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurley. It is Wednesday, the 18th of June. Let's get into the day's top stories. And as always, thank you for joining us here on Real America's Voice. We appreciate your patronage. First up, we'll talk about the energy market prices as it relates to the ongoing Israel and Iran conflict. Unsurprisingly, the energy sector does not like the prospect of a full-blown war. More details on that coming up today also. I'll continue the discussion on the conflict between Israel and Iran, but this time from the lens of a faith-based perspective. Many Americans who uphold the tenets of religion find these times to be prophetic, more than coincidental. More on that coming up, and then later. I'll discuss the Supreme Court's recent ruling that Tennessee's law protecting minors from surgical mutilation and dangerous drugs for gender transition is not a violation of the Equal Protection Clause protecting kids from these butchers. Good news. All the details and updates coming your way. But first, we start here. Of course, all eyes are on the war between Israel and Iran. The attacks continued overnight. President Trump is also pondering what role the United States will be playing going forward. That's why he was in the Situation Room yesterday. I think some decisions have been made, but we don't know what they are yet. I'm going to get to everything here today that's been going on and keep an eye on breaking news that happens as well. But first of all, it was busy. Take a look at Tehran getting pounded overnight. Here it is. Just in the last little while, a change of entertainment across the country of Iran. The national cable has been cut and hijacked. And the televisions are all broadcasting patriot programming, telling those in Iran to rise up, to repel the regime, to have regime change, to stand up for their country in the future. That's what's playing on every television in Iran right now. The national feed has been cut. Somebody pretty clever there. Now, the Saudi Crown Prince MBS says his country of Saudi Arabia doesn't want nuclear weapons, but if Iran gets them, he says they will follow suit immediately. Here he is.
Iran is not a rival to Saudi Arabia. Its army is not among the top 5 armies in the Muslim world. The Saudi economy is larger than the Iranian economy. Iran is far from being equal to Saudi Arabia.
But I've seen that you called the Ayatollah Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened happened. I don't want to see the same events happening in the Middle East.
Does Saudi Arabia need nuclear weapons to counter Iran?
Saudi Arabia does not want to acquire any nuclear bomb. But without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible.
And that, of course, is not what we want. We don't want nuclear proliferation throughout the Middle East. We want Israel to prevail. And it seems to me, if you watch all the tea leaves right now, we're going to be in this fight. We're going to be in this fight by the weekend. The United States of America. I don't know if it's going to be boots on the ground or 35,000-pound bunker buster bombs, but we will be in the war by this weekend. That is my best guess right now. Could be even sooner. Steve Bannon, of course, on the side of no more wars. I think he has that opportunity, does Donald Trump, to sidestep the war, but I think it's becoming less likely by the hour. Here's Bannon.
Kayleigh, no offense, and I realize you went to Harvard, so we won't hold it against you. Kayleigh is, a lot of people know, is a graduate of Harvard Law School. It's just not, let's go bomb some stuff because we want action. You have to think it through, and you have to think it downrange. The last thing this country wants, the last thing President Trump wants, is to be dealing with a massive humanitarian crisis on another failed Middle East regime, like in Syria. This one will be 10, this is 10x what Syria is. That collapses, and all of a sudden they're calling for the United States, humanitarian. Look what's happening in Gaza when they're calling the United States to do something. That is 1/100th of what Persia will be, right? What will Persia will be. And so we have to be very, 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 you have to really think this thing through. And that's what President Trump is spending so much time on it. That's why he's going to the National Security Council. That's why he flew back. President Trump is not, he ain't going to jump into this. He's going to think it through. And even when he takes an action, he's going to want optionality off that action, other options. That's the way he negotiates. That's the way he rolls.
We'll see how that is. That's the way he rolls. Look, none of us want war here. But we have to be honest. If we have an opportunity to take the nuclear capabilities away from Iran, to prevent them from having nuclear weapons, well, then we have to move forward with that potentially. But, as Bannon pointed out, you have to have options all the way through. Now, earlier today, President Trump addressed the issue of Iran with the media while taking a look at the installation of the 2 brand new flagpoles at the White House that he authorized a short time ago. Listen to what the president had to say.
Let's answer questions about whether you are moving closer, or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they got hit. Remember 60 days? And then came the 60. 61 is going to become a very famous number. That was one hell of a hit, that first hit. That was one hell of a hit. Not sustainable, to be honest. That's where it ended. It ended on the first night, yes.
Is it too late, though? Do you think it's too late to now?
Really, nothing's too late. The only thing too late is Powell. Powell's too late. Too late, Powell.
Nothing's too late. It's never too late. You can always negotiate. President Trump also had this to say about Iran chanting death to America for 40 years or more, calling out the bullies they are. I kind of appreciate this. Watch.
No, they had bad intentions. For 40 years, they've been saying death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody else that they didn't like. They were bullies. They were schoolyard bullies. And now they're not bullies anymore, but we'll see what happens. Look, nothing's finished until it's finished. War is very complex. A lot of bad things can happen. A lot of turns are made. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that we won anything yet. I would say that we sure as hell made a lot of progress. And we'll see. The next week is going to be very big. Maybe less than a week. Maybe less. But is there anybody here that said it would be okay to have a hostile, very, zealots, really, but to have a hostile country have a nuclear weapon that could destroy 25 miles, but much more than that, could destroy other nations just by the breeze blowing the dust. That dust blows to other nations and they get decimated. This is just not a threat you can have. And we've been threatened by Iran for many years. If you go back and look at my history, if you go back 15 years, I was saying we cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. I've been saying it for a long time. And I mean it more now than I ever meant it.
Yeah. He means it more now. They can't have it. I'm sorry, they can't chant death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody they don't like, as he pointed out. a nuclear weapon. From putting America first to ending wars overseas and sealing new trade deals, President Trump is doing things no presidents have done, not in my lifetime. A great example is the border. Clear example, big win. Our chief White House correspondent was standing next to the president as they installed these flagpoles. Listen to what they talked about and what they discussed.
Did you see the May numbers for immigration?
Extended again?
Yeah, great numbers.
Zero.
Yeah, we had zero. Did you see that, everybody?
You were going to ask that.
Zero.
I was going to ask that.
She's on our side there. Because most people don't want to ask her.
Well, she said, she told earlier, Brian, you see the main numbers. It's
Zero, yeah.
How is that even?
Because we really have a tight border. Now, we have let a lot of people in, but they came in legally. They actually have to take a little test, and they have to say, I love America, minor things like that.
That's how many people were set free in America. It was 70,000, give or take, last May. That were set free, not the ones that came to the border. The ones that came to the border were 8,700. It was 140,000 last May that came to the border, forced their way in. But all these people being released, that doesn't happen anymore. Indeed, President Trump is putting America first on all fronts, even if it's something as small as the installation of two beautiful flagpoles on the White House lawn. They're almost 100 feet high. This is what he had to say about that, by the way. Listen.
Yeah, it is surprising that out of all the presidents we've had, that this has never taken place.
Look at it.
It's crazy.
Look, there's a little flagpole that's like 15 feet high. A little tiny flag up top. This is the real deal. This is the best you can get. There's nothing like this. Most of them are 20 feet, 25 feet. This is close to 100 feet. And I think it's a great location. You put it out there, people don't appreciate it.
That's true.
And then we're going to do a flower bed around it, beautiful flower bed.
Oh,
bigger than that.
Oh, okay.
So you have the pole, and then you have the pole.
When are you going to come out here and hit some golf balls? When you find time in your schedule.
35 club championships. You all know that.
I know that.
35 club championships. I haven't hit a ball in 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Time to get out there.
It's time to.
Well, with President Trump considering military action against Iran, many believe a strike may come as early as this weekend. Like I just said, I'm one of those people. A strike is imminent, I believe, at this point, reading the tea leaves and the information I'm getting out of Washington. Now, what does that mean? I don't think it means boots on the ground. Here at Real America's Voice, we will work diligently to keep an eye on it for you and keep you updated no matter what happens. But I think that strike is coming. You listen to what he's saying. You listen to what Marco Rubio is saying. You listen to what the other people in the administration are saying. They all lead to one place. You had 60 days. You had a chance to make a deal. You blew it. You continue to threaten Americans. And now Iran is threatening and posturing to hit American military bases throughout the Middle East. In Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and elsewhere. It will not stand, and if they hit our American bases, you can bet the full fury of the American military will come back in spades. So we'll see what happens and keep you up to speed right here with any breaking news. So don't go anywhere. Spend your day here on Real America's Voice. After the break, as the conflict between Israel and Iran continues, some experts are concerned with oil prices as well as the U.S. markets if they get heavily involved. More details on that coming up on America's Voice Live.
day, and it's pretty much proceeded that way. I have a meeting in the war room in a little while, situation room, as some people call it. So we're going to meet. We're going to see. We're in the midst of it's a terrible thing. I hate to see it. I hate to see all that death, so much death and destruction. But death primarily is what I hate to see.
Does that mean you haven't made a decision yet on what to do?
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war. There was no reason for Russia, Ukraine. A lot of wars there was no reason for. You look right up there, I don't know, see the Declaration of Independence, and I say, I wonder if the Civil War, it always seemed to me maybe that could have been solved without losing 600,000 plus people. So a lot of, it's very sad to see. It's very sad to see what's happening. But with that being said, I would say right now, Israel, from the standpoint of winning a war, is doing pretty well. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, in your meeting today with the Chief of Staff of the Pakistani Army, did you talk about Iran? Did that come up? Is there anything you can share from that meeting?
Yeah, well, they know Iran very well, better than most. And they're not happy about anything. It's not that they're bad with Israel. They know them both, actually, but they probably, maybe they know Iran better. But they see what's going on, and he agreed with me. The reason I had him here, I wanted to thank him for not going into the war, just ending the war. And I want to thank, as you know, Prime Minister Modi just left, just a little while ago, just left, and we're working a trade deal with India. We're working a trade deal with Pakistan, and they were both here. But I was with Modi a few weeks ago. He was here, actually. But now we speak to him, and I'm so happy. There was a deal that two smart people, plus, they have people on their staff too, but two very smart people decided not to keep going with that war. That could have been a nuclear war. Those are two nuclear powers, big ones, big nuclear powers, and they decided not. So I was honored to meet him today.
And if I can, Chief, sir, and for anyone who may want to answer, how has the travel bans from certain countries affected fans maybe coming in for the games, or is that not a consideration?
Johnny, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not a concern for us. For the games now in the Club World Cup, everything has been done in a very smooth way. We have an excellent collaboration, of course, with the President, but with the task force in particular. For next year, the World Cup, we have one more year to work, and the learnings that we have this year with the Club World Cup, which is historic, I say this to all the Americans, because it's the first ever Club World Cup, and it's played in the United States of America. So the learnings we'll have for this will apply them next year.
And they're largely sold out, so I don't know. I don't think he's too worried about the travel ban. He doesn't know what the travel ban is, I don't think. Johnny, tell me what the travel ban is. He doesn't know what it is. He's largely sold out. Like tonight is totally. I've had friends, they heard about this meeting. They said, can you give me tickets? I don't know if I can get tickets. He won't give them to me.
We can speak.
Maybe John will give them to me. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, two questions, if I could. One about Iran and then one domestically. With Iran, what's your message to Americans both here and abroad who are not only concerned about the U.S. potentially getting involved in another conflict in the Middle East, but worry about the potential for retaliation here at home?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get involved either, but I've been saying for 20 years, maybe longer, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I've been saying it for a long time. And I think they were a few weeks away from having one. And they had to sign a document. I think they wish they signed it now. It was a fair deal. And now it's a harder thing to sign, It's a lot of water over the dam. But, it's very, I say it very simply. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Too much devastation. And they'd use it. I believe they'd use it. Others won't use it. But I believe they'd use it. So that's it. It's very simple as far as I'm concerned. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
And then domestically, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley came out this week as the lead sponsor of a bill to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. It stands out because he's a Republican. There's still 20 states that have it at $7.25. Do you support the legislation or the idea?
Well, I haven't seen it. I'd have to speak to Josh. He's a very good friend of mine. That's interesting that Josh did that. I'm going to have to think about that one. Some people agree with it, some people don't. Some people say it really turns away business. Restaurants close, and a lot of things happen. Other people agree. I'd have to speak to Josh. He's a good guy.
Mr. President, for the Iran, the possibility of an Iran deal, is the destruction or the dismantling of the Fordow nuclear enrichment center, is that a prerequisite for a deal? Is that a red line for you?
No, it's just something that people talk about having. We're the only ones that have the capability to do it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do it at all. We have the best military equipment in the world. You see that with this fight. We have planes that are undetectable, flying around like, nobody's able to see them stealth. You guys want to be stealthy tonight. You can be stealth, you'll never lose, right? But these are incredible planes and weapons. We have the best weapons in the world. By far, nobody close, and certain countries take advantage of that. Israel has incredible weaponry, so we'll see what happens. I've been asked about it by everybody, but I haven't made a decision.
Mr. President, you talked earlier today about having daily conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah.
How have those conversations weighed on you in terms of getting more involved? You've been lobbying for the U.S. to get more involved. Has that had an impact in kind of your evolution, sir?
Look, we talk, and I'd like to see everything done. I would have preferred having just an agreement, a strong agreement, verifiable agreement. But it was such a shame. They were so close. Iran was very close to signing what would have been a very good agreement for them. And maybe that could still happen, I guess. They do want to come and see us. They want to see me in the White House. That's a big statement. But it's very late.
Is it enough of a statement to hold off getting involved?
We're going to see what happens. Look, we're going to see what happens. Ending it as soon as you can would be good.
Have you closed the door on meeting with them?
No.
Okay, so it's still open to them coming here in your eyes.
They asked if they could come, and we'll see if that happens. It's not that easy for them to come. They can't get out. They're in Iran, and in one case, the guy wanted to come so badly, but he can't get out because there's bombs dropping all over the place.
Have you seen the Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz interview? It seems like this issue on whether or not the United States should strike is kind of dividing a lot of your supporters.
No, my supporters are for me. My supporters are America first. They make America great again. My supporters don't want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong, and I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me ever since, right? But very simple. If they think that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, then they should oppose me. But nobody thinks it's okay. People that don't want, I don't want to fight either. I'm not looking to fight. But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. Maybe we won't have to fight. Don't forget, we haven't been fighting. We add a certain amount of genius to everything, but we haven't been fighting at all. Israel's done a very good job of that. But we'll see what happens. The bottom line is they can't have nuclear. And if I can't imagine that Ted Cruz said it's okay for Iran to have nuclear, including Tucker. I don't think Tucker says it's okay. The problem is then they get themselves into a thing. They don't want them to have nuclear, but then they say, well, we don't want to fight. Well, you're going to have to make a choice because it's possible that you're going to have to fight for them not to have nuclear. And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight, and maybe it'll end, very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon because the entire world will blow up. I'm not going to let that happen.
Mr. President, you had a bit of a row with President Emmanuel Macron of France the other day at the G7.
No,
it sounded like.
He's a nice guy. Look, he said I was going back home to make a ceasefire. not a ceasefire. We're long beyond ceasefire. And I said, why do you say that? Why would you say ceasefire? It's a bad term to use. Because a ceasefire means like everything's going swimmingly, we'll take a little time off. It's not. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
Mr. President.
So I thought it was a very badly worded statement by him, and obviously I let him know that.
On the southern border, you've had record low numbers for the month of May, 95 apprehensions, 0 releases, compared to that of the previous administration exactly a year ago, more than 60,000 releases. What do you attribute that success to?
I like you. Who are you with?
Turning Point USA, sir.
Well, they're very good. Turning Point, Charlie, very good. That's what I call a good question, fellas. 1 out of 10, John. 1 out of 10, but that's a really good question. No, we had record good numbers on the border. And people are coming in, but they have to come in legally. Like some of these guys behind me, they have to come in legally. And if they come in legally, we want them. They have to say they love America, they love our country. And if they can't say that, we don't want them. Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, press.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you very much. Nice Pulitzer Prize. Hey, Doug, take a good picture.
Thank you, guys.
Pulitzer Prize winner.
Thank you, guys.
New York Times.
Keep
Pulitzer.
moving. Thank you.
The Times is the bad part.
Thank you, everybody. Keep moving. Keep moving, guys.
All right, there you have it. Donald Trump sitting down taking questions again today. And all the questions, by and large, except for the last one about the border, on the potential war with Iran that the United States, look, it's ever more likely. His comments, pretty easy to decipher. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He repeated it many times. I've said it for 20 years. My supporters don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. He said that to another question, did the president. No way they can have a nuclear weapon. It is clear that unless Iran says in the next 24 to 48 hours that we will give full access to our nuclear facilities, that we will not have a nuclear weapon, that we will basically take the knee, then we're going to war. You've been told. That's what the president said. And as this war, the situation continues to escalate, many evangelicals are referring to biblical text. Israel's named in Operation Rising Lion from verse 23-24 of the book of Numbers in the Holy Bible. Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink of the blood of the slain. This biblical verse promises a victorious future for a powerful Israel. Here with me to discuss this is evangelical pastor and Christian author Greg Laurie. Pastor, thank you for being here. Obviously, you heard the president as I did. This war is coming. 24 to 48 hours, 72 hours on the outside. It's coming by Friday, maybe sooner. I mean, if it happened in the next 20 minutes, I don't think anybody would be surprised. Apply your theological cap here to what you read in the Bible, to the passage here, to the rising lion, to the events that are happening, sir.
And hope.
All right, we've got a little bit of a technical issue there. I apologize for that. It wasn't just me. I thought maybe sometimes it's my connection. We did not have a full audio connection there for Pastor Greg Laurie. We will get to him. I can assure you of that because we want to hear what he has to say about this. And look, a lot of people are looking to Scripture to say, how does this apply? How does this battle, the latest battle in the Middle East? Look, we've all watched these wars in the Middle East as long as we've been alive, all of us, because they've been going on since the 1940s. Of course, in the 1960s, the 1967 war, the Yom Kippur War, the Six-Day War, and one after another until the surprise of the Camp David Accords in 1979 seemed to bring some peace to the region, but of course, it didn't hold. A new administration in Washington, of course, has brought a lot of positive change when it comes to fixing our broken health care system. The reality, however, is that there is only so much the government can do, and that if we really want to make America healthy again, that starts at home with each and every one of us. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from TWC doctors all the time on this network, and you know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you safe and healthy in your family, too. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you're prepared for whatever happens with their series of prescription medical kits that contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue to weight loss and so much more. It can all help you stay healthy and live your best life. Your best life. Make America healthy again starts at home with you. Do your part to protect you and your family and protect your good health. Go to twc.health/voice, twc.health/voice, twc.health/voice. When you use the promo code VOICE, you'll save 10%. We'll take a break and be right back on America's Voice Live. All right, a lot going on. As you can imagine, the president just speaking there, doing an impromptu session with reporters. All indications to me pretty clearly are that we're going to war. We're going to join the effort of Israel much more seriously. It's pretty obvious when he says, I have not made a decision. He said that a couple of times. He's not made a decision, but my supporters don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. No nuclear weapons, period. I've said that for more than 20 years. No nukes for Iran. No way that they could have them. He repeated that theme time and again. Joining me now, Hans von Spakovsky from Heritage and Mark Morano, who's been patiently waiting, was going to be here a few minutes ago, but the president interrupted. He does that from time to time. Hans, let's start with you. What do you make of what you've heard? I think that we're at war in 24 to 48 hours in a much more substantial way. Maybe that means a 35,000-pound bunker buster at Fordo or something of that nature. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, the president certainly may launch a strike to help Israel destroy the potential for Iran to build nuclear weapons. I don't think that necessarily puts us in an all-out war, because how is Iran going to retaliate given the widespread destruction of their military forces? Plus, look, Iran's been at war with us for 2 decades. They've been a major sponsor of terrorism all over the world, particularly in the Middle East. Terrorism, where they were training terrorists, supplying money, often with one purpose, to attack the United States and its interests. I mean, they've killed hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans through their terrorist activities. So there's been a war going on. We just haven't taken retaliation against them for all of their acts of terrorism over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, and terrorism by proxy, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, the barracks bombing, all the way back in 1983, and the list goes on, right? Let's bring in Mark Morano. Mark, this potential expansion of the war, if Iran is crippled, especially if it comes to their oil fields, it's not just Iran that's going to be hurt here, because Russia, China, North Korea, they all get substantial amounts of energy, oil out the front door and the back door of Iran, violating the sanctions, but it happens every day. I think the most pressure ends up on the head of Xi Jinping. He's already having financial challenges in China, despite what they may say on the headlines. If his oil gets restricted, that ratchets up the pressure at home in China, doesn't it?
It really does. In fact, he's got a sweetheart deal with Iran. They're getting heavily discounted oil from Iran, and they've invested, China has invested nearly $500 billion in the infrastructure of Iran in order to have this sort of, as you mentioned, this sort of sweetheart relationship. If Iran is disrupted, it's going to affect China, which then, of course, Donald Trump has a trade deal trying to get rare earths. China could retaliate in ways like that. But I think more immediate is going to be the Strait of Hormuz. If there's any disruption there, that's 1/5 of all the crude oil that goes through there. It's going to affect energy prices, gas prices at home, very similar to what we saw at the beginning of the Ukraine and Russia war after the Russian invasion. Energy markets don't like war. Energy markets don't like war in the Middle East. And energy markets don't like war in the Middle East with China possibly getting some kind of retaliation afterward in anger for something that's not going well for them. And it looks like China will be hurt by this.
Yeah, and when you look at the Strait of Hormuz, just explain to the folks, like you said, 20 to 25% of the world's oil travels through that daily.
Yes.
How easily is that? I mean, that's a pinch point. It's a pinch point on the map. How easily could it be interfered with and blocked effectively?
Very easily. I mean, the threat of any kind of terrorism, bombing, brief blockade. We saw what the Houthis were trying to do at different ports and waterways. So just the threat can have major impacts. They don't have to do anything. And that's what I'm getting at here is war is it's the rumors of war, and that just has an unbelievable effect. Prices will go up. There's almost no way to avoid that if this happens. Israel has already shut down 2 out of its 3 offshore natural gas fields. So even Israel's oil energy is being affected. Crude oil has jumped 7% to $74 a barrel as of a few days ago. So there's all kinds of sort of everyone, as you mentioned, 24 to 48 hours. The tension is real, and tension actually equals real increases in energy price because the markets get spooked very easily.
They sure do, and I think that West Texas Intermediate was at about $61 a week ago. It's at $74.75 as we speak. Brent crude, the benchmark at $76.27, up from about $64. So $12, $13 a barrel. It has gone up. Hans, you mentioned this is not a full-out war if we use American air power. That I agree with you on. But if the Ayatollah, if the mullahs say, you know what, we can hit American bases in UAE or Qatar or Saudi Arabia or other military bases, United States bases in the Middle East, would they be that bold? And if they did that, what would be the reaction, do you think?
Well, I think they would get hit even harder by the United States because the United States has much greater military forces in the Middle East. By the way, all of this emphasizes how important the other big change that's been made by the Trump administration. Remember, the Biden administration did everything it could to clamp down on our energy production, not approving new oil and natural gas leasing, all kinds of things like that. This administration has been doing everything it can to take all that off, to greatly increase our energy production, make us net exporters again of oil and natural gas, all of which helps our allies. You know, Europe, that can make them less dependent, for example, on Russia. So, you know, the domestic policy there actually helps our foreign policy objectives, too.
It does, but it cannot be corrected in a few weeks. And Mark, you go ahead and jump in on that, because look, Donald Trump is playing catch up from 4 years that were waged economic war on our energy sector. He's trying to play catch up. It takes a while, doesn't it?
Yes, and that was exactly spot on. What we're thank God that we have Donald Trump as president. Joe Biden reduced our strategic petroleum reserve down to levels not seen since the 1970s. With all of the energy bans, it was unbelievable, stifling. And had he had a second term, all of those would have been really restricting as they became more and more apparent. What Donald Trump has done is recognize that domestic energy supply, America First energy, if you will, is the greatest national security insurance we have. And he also mentioned the natural gas exporting, which Joe Biden banned. This was one of the ones, by the way, that the auto pen did, and Joe Biden had no memory of it. He was probably asleep when it happened. That left all of our allies in Europe just hanging. You know, they had been promised natural gas, as you mentioned, to replace the Russian natural gas, but because Biden banned the export and didn't even remember it, we left them all hanging without our exports. So this is going to be multi-dimensional chess when it comes to energy here in the next few weeks to months.
Hans, last question to you, and we don't have a lot of time here, but I'm going to throw this back to you because Donald Trump left the G7 early. And one of the things about Mark Carney being the Prime Minister of Canada is he is destroying the Canadian energy sector, which creates more opportunity for America because he wants net zero north of the border, which is complete insanity for Canada, but that's what he wants. He's not going to help out Europe. He's not going to help ease the world energy pinch, but America can. I'll give you the last word, Hans, on where we go from here.
Well, that just puts even more emphasis on us upping our energy production because Canada is not going to help us. And yeah, we may get in all kinds of problems if we have to attack Iran, but if they develop nuclear weapons with the ability to deliver them on missiles down the road, we would be in much worse danger.
Hans, Mark, greatly appreciate the insight from both of you today. Greatly appreciate it on short notice. Thank you for being here. America, are we on the edge of war? We might be, my friends. It looks like it's 24 to 48 hours away. That's my best guess, but I'm just speculating. We'll see how it plays out. We'll talk more about it after the break here on America's Voice Live. right, and welcome back. You know, the markets do not like instability. They fell some today. They're leveling off, up about 15 points in the Dow. But look, financial stability is what the markets crave. If they don't have it, well, that pushes gold prices higher. And right now, watching what's happening with Iran and Israel and likely America weighing into that fight, well, that's where we are. Time to talk about what comes in handy. Let's talk to Birch Gold, helping customers keep their financial future intact. Joining me now, precious metals specialist for Birch Gold, Philip Patrick. Philip, nice to see you today. Very busy day here with the president speaking and a lot going on. It's moments like these that people think, my gosh, I wish I had more gold, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the perfect storm for precious metals, not so much for the world, but we have an escalating war in the Middle East, of course. Oil prices rising dramatically on the back of it, 7.5% on Friday. As we always see with this sort of climate, instability creates fear in the financial system. Investors start looking for safety, which is exactly why gold rose by 1.5% immediately on the news of conflict. So, you know, from a broader economic perspective, I think this regional instability adds to fuel the existing inflation we're seeing globally and ultimately means higher gold prices, at least short to medium term.
Yeah, a bit of good news, we thought. China and the United States working out a trade deal potentially is being talked about. But if this war continues this way, China will lose access to oil. It'll create chaos in the Chinese markets, again, creating instability and uncertainty, and again, potentially pushing gold higher, right?
It's almost everything that's happening at the moment is a catalyst for growth in gold. But you're absolutely correct. We came to an agreement. If we start aiding the Israelis in sort of taking out Iranian energy supply, it's going to be a problem for the Chinese. They may restrict access to rare earth minerals, which Trump had negotiated, which would be very problematic domestically. So things are heating up from a geopolitical standpoint, and of course that always ends up bleeding into the broader economy.
Sure, and the big concern for people here, of course, is what's my dollar worth? What's my investment worth? If it goes down 20%, I'm in bad shape. If I go down 50%, wow, everything that I dreamed about in retirement, it's gone. You just dream to eat at that point. So why in the 21st century are we here buying gold? I mean, that seems awfully old school compared to all the high-tech stuff we have out there, but gold's still the safe haven, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it turns out gold is no relic. It was heading that way last century. Certainly, we saw unparalleled stability of currency. We saw huge economic boom. People have to understand that is the historical aberration. And what we're seeing now, in my mind, is a reversion to historical norms. And when that happens, gold performs. Listen, last century, it didn't perform relative to financial markets. This century has more than doubled the major financial markets in the United States. People have to understand there is a direct link between debt, deficit spending, currency supply, and growth in gold. And we are seeing that over and over again.
And that's why governments are gobbling up gold right now. If you want to be protected and you want the best information possible, well, you need to trust Birch Gold. Text the word America to the number 989898. Claim your free information kit on gold. That's America to 989898. Philip Patrick, always appreciate it. We'll keep an eye on it and have you back very soon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, don't go anywhere. More coverage of what's happening in the Middle East right after this. coverage now, special coverage of the pending war in Israel and Iran. And I say pending because it seems that the United States is going to join this conflict based on the comments from Donald Trump. You know, he literally just said things could happen over the weekend. Here with me now is Alex Trayman. He is in Jerusalem. He is the CEO and the Jerusalem bureau chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. Alex, thank you for being here. I just want to get a sense, if we could, of the mood in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in Israel in general, from you, your colleagues. What's the sense? What's the feeling?
Thanks for having me, Steve. Well, certainly we don't feel like this is a pending war. We're in day 6 of active combat. The Israeli Air Force has been going nonstop in and out of all parts of Iran. And here in Israel for the last 6 days, we've been pummeled with barrages of ballistic missiles coming every few hours. Israelis ducking in and out of bomb shelters. We've had several direct hits, though much fewer than we would have anticipated, considering the size of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal.
The last I heard, more than 40% of their missile launchers had been taken out. They have been greatly diminished, and the waves of missiles are coming, but they're smaller waves because they can't launch because their effectiveness has been greatly degraded by the IDF. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's what's being reported. The initial waves of ballistic missiles were in the dozens at a time, which could really overrun the Israeli air defense systems, which are very sophisticated but limited in their effectiveness. There's no hermetic seal over Israel from these ballistic missiles. And what we've seen is over time, the number of missiles that have been fired simultaneously are diminishing, not because Iran doesn't have missiles. The estimates are that they could still have well over 1,000 ballistic missiles. But if they have fewer launchers available, Israel's creating bottlenecks in the launch process. But we did see in the last launch, it's being reported that for the first time, Iran sent an intercontinental ballistic missile that could travel over 2,000 kilometers at Israel, that could go at speeds of up to Mach 14. But fortunately, Israel's air defenses were able even to intercept that missile as well.
Right now, the concern that I have are a couple of reports that I've had out of the Middle East from pretty decent sources of mine who say the Iron Dome has done very well so far, getting about 95% of the projectiles that are incoming. The problem is they're running short on defensive measures. I mean, at some point, defending against that many missiles, of course, depletes your resources as well. Are you concerned that the Iron Dome could run short of what it needs to defend the country?
Well, it's a multi-level system that includes the Arrow system, David Sling. Iron Dome is really for the shorter range missiles, mostly shot from Gaza or from southern Lebanon. But, you know, Israel, they had projected that there would be thousands of ballistic missiles rained on Israel one time. They were prepared for this, as you can see by the success of the missions taking place over the last six days inside Iran. Israel was very well prepared. So the fact that there's even many less missiles being fired at Israel than was anticipated in some of the even better case, and certainly in the worst case scenarios, would be a strong indication that Israel has the amount of missile defense that it needs to ward off these attacks.
Alex, we got about 20 seconds here. Do the Israelis want the United States more heavily involved?
Well, you know, there's two ways to look at it. First, if Israel can do it themselves, then Israel emerges as the superpower that took out Iran and becomes the superpower of the Middle East. At the same time, if America comes in, that means that the job can be finished much faster because America has capabilities that Israel simply doesn't have.
Alex Trayman, greatly appreciate you joining us on short notice from Jerusalem. Things are developing quickly, and I think the Americans are joining the war. Sir, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So much. All right, so that's the way I read the tea leaves, folks. It's not ambiguous. Donald Trump says they cannot have nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia and other countries say they cannot have nuclear weapons. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So say all the countries in the Middle East. It's not ambiguous, folks. It's just a matter of time. Join me tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for the latest to start your day here on Real America's Voice, and then back for America's Voice Live. We'll talk then.
tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room in a culture that celebrates the weak. Show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
There we go. New York Stock Exchange, 4 o'clock, Broad and Wall in New York City, Manhattan, ringing the bell, ding, ding, ding. And kind of a quiet day on Wall Street, believe it or not. We're all waiting today to find out what Jerome Powell was going to do with interest rates. And as you can see, the Dow Jones ended a little bit lower, 45 lower. This, a couple seconds, it tends to continue to settle. So 42 on the screen. About the same. NASDAQ up a touch, up 25 on your screen. Here, there. They're settling right there. 38, 183, 25, 44. Couple of things. Gold holding the high 3,300 area, almost $3,400 an ounce still. Oil still up there. Oil's been reactive to what's going on in the Middle East. Iran holds the second largest oil reserves on the planet, next to Saudi Arabia. I think we're third in the United States, but Iran, every time Israel bombs something that's near oil infrastructure, oil prices shoot up. When it calms down, they start to ease back down. So it was another $2 higher earlier, $75 a barrel. Again, we started when this whole Iran-Israel conflict started. It was around $62, $63 a barrel. So not very good. And let me just jump over to crypto. Crypto's been all over the place lately. Bitcoin right now, 103,900. So Bitcoin backing off a little bit. And one more, we like to keep an eye on what Elon Musk's stock is doing, because remember when Tim Walz said he was rooting for it to go down at $225 a share. It's $322, so it's $100 higher. All right, let's bring in our first guest, Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, who says President Trump is acting defensively, does not want a war. Welcome, Congressman. When I say Andy, I mean Congressman Andy Biggs. I don't think anyone wants a war, sir. Here seems to be the question. Is this allow Israel to go take out the economic and the nuclear capabilities of Iran? Is it the United States doing it, or is this regime change? And where do you stand on these? Because this is really kind of splitting MAGA in two right now.
Yeah, no, the easiest part, the last one is this regime change. And here I think you have a tremendous split. I don't think Trump's necessarily advocating for regime change, but I do believe Netanyahu is. I've been tracking his comments, and I think he wants regime change. Is the U.S. involved? To the extent that we provide the vast amount of weaponry to Israel, then I guess you could say we are. But we sell Israel and many other countries weaponry as well, and ultimately those countries are going to make the decision on how they use it. And I would say one thing that you see, well, actually two things that you see: the superiority right now of the U.S. weaponry, number one. Number two is that Israel has things at hand without the U.S. Getting involved offensively or aggressively or taking this to Iran. So I'm trying to get all your questions. I know you gave me three. There.
So Congressman, I guess my question is where does Congressman Biggs fall in like right now? What's going on in MAGAverse? We have Tucker Carlson on one side saying that we should have no part in what's going on striking Iran, and then you have the Fox hosts, let's call them Hannity and Mark Levin and Jesse Waters, who say annihilate Iran. So, and they're going back and forth. And to be honest, like Trump kind of ran on, I don't want any more foreign wars, but has recently signaled that the U.S. might get involved militarily, kinetically militarily. And I'm not sure if that's just a negotiating ploy or tool he's using, or he really means we would fly some of our own jets and drop bombs on Iran, because that would certainly implicate us. Your thoughts? Where does Andy Biggs fall?
Yeah, so my personal view is that the America First international policy is one where we don't get involved in foreign wars, where we look out for the U.S. interest always first. We don't put boots on the ground. We don't put our troops in harm's way unless there's a legitimate defensive posture that we have to take. And I'm looking at this and I say, well, Israel is a great friend, a great ally, and they've engaged in this because they believe that Iran is an existential threat to them. And who's to say they're wrong? I mean, for all these years, Khomeini and then his predecessor all said they wanted to wipe Israel off the map. IAEA, the International Atomic Energy affiliation there, they said that there's vast amounts of enriched uranium going on. They're expanding their centrifuges in Iran. So who's to say that Israel did not have a predicate to do what they've done? The question for us is, and for me is, and this is where I come down, we don't need to be going in there. Israel is taking care of business absolutely fine. From that perspective, they're winning. They have control over the skies. They've got dominion over all of the space that's Iran, and they're controlling that situation. The U.S. doesn't need to do more than that. In fact, I'm a believer that what President Trump is really trying to do is leverage what Israel's doing to get Iran back to the table to resolve this, because the bottom line is he doesn't want, and I don't blame him, I agree with this position, I don't want Iran to have any enriched uranium that they don't need for actual nuclear reactor for an energy deployment. But they don't even need that because they have, as you say, massive amounts of fossil.
That's always been the joke, Congressman. It's always been the joke. Yeah. Iran's been doing this since I've been, an adult, and I came into the industry in the oil business, and they've been saying that they need nuclear for power. And they have a handful of million people in Tehran. They have trillions of barrels equivalent of energy under their sand. Why in the hell would they need nuclear? They don't. This is all about gaining the weapon. We've known it for 50 years. The question is, there are those who say, do it now, get rid of it, and regime change or not. I mean, we tried to play the regime change in Iraq, and it didn't work out so well, did it?
No, I'm not a big believer that we can change regime. I think if I were predicting what would happen is, if Israel actually does attempt to change the regime, if they do take out Khomeini or weaken him sufficiently, I do think that the Iranian street, the people there are great. The base of that country, they want economic freedom. They want a change in regime. They want more liberal policies. And it wouldn't surprise me that by substantially weakening this regime, that you would see some movement from below, from the street. The past couple of times you've seen that kind of movement, it was because the U.S. had kind of stimulated that movement, right? And I think you're familiar with this, Eric, where we said, well, yeah, if they go forward, then we'll be there to support you, et cetera, and then they do go forward, and we disappear. I'm of the opinion that we stand down and we watch this thing deploy, and what'll happen is Israel's going to weaken that leadership, and don't be surprised if you see movement from the Iranian street. And that would be your regime change. But I'm not a big believer that you can go in and forcibly change regimes, because it is rarely worked in the past.
Let's just, Hezbollah has come out and said we're not going to get involved unless and until it looks like there may be a regime change in Tehran, in Iran. What if Hezbollah does attack any of our interests anywhere, assets, interests in the region? If Hezbollah does as a proxy to Iran, then do we get involved militarily?
I think our response would be the same as it always is. If when Hezbollah goes, we respond and say, we don't just go say something. We actually demonstrably rebuke Hezbollah with military force, kinetic force. And that necessarily, it would be Hezbollah accelerating and drawing us into it. And that's the danger we have here. I don't want us to be drawn into it. But as you know, we've got a lot of personnel and assets over there that have some degree of vulnerability. But I do think that the proxies of Tehran, they have to be prepared to stand down a bit. I mean, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, Hamas, they've all been dramatically reduced over the last 6 months. And you know, you don't want us to have to respond because we don't want to get drawn into it. But in that case, it would be Hezbollah asking for us to be drawn in. And by the way, that is a real danger.
So what do you say to those who say, we have this moment in time in history to take down this regime? Clearly Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terror the world has ever seen, the world over. We know that they've sponsored terror, Hezbollah, Hamas, everywhere around the world. Who are these? They sponsor it, they pay for it, they train them. Is this not the moment? I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't want to go to war either. I don't want any American soldiers in the air, on the ground, anywhere. Support Israel, fine. However, this may be the moment where you can turn Iran into a hostile state sponsor of terror and bring them into the 21st century.
Look, if they're going to have regime change in Iran that's going to be meaningful and takes them back to a normalized nation state where they have a free economy with free movement of their people, which I believe that's what the people of Iran want, then it doesn't have to be imposed on them by us. This notion that this is the moment in time, this is the only moment in time, we've heard that many times. And I would say this isn't our war necessarily. We're supporting Israel. They're our friend and our partner, and we provide them with weaponry as a client state. But it's Israel that is capable of doing this without our intervention. And I do believe that Iran could be a much more responsible player in the Middle East. But don't forget, even when Iran was run quite a bit differently than it is now, it wasn't Iran always. There were other states in the Middle East that would rise up. There were other bodies, there were other factions and radicals that rose up that also wanted to try to get Israel. We have had multiple wars to destroy Israel, and Israel's always been able to survive that. But I think they're so strong now that they can actually take out Iran. But the point I'm trying to make is there is rarely in history a single moment where action will change the course of history forever. And I'm not sure this is it either, because we don't know what the mood of the Iranian street is other than this general reporting that I've seen for years and talking to basically Iranian refugees. I do believe that they're ready for a regime change, but I'm not sure this is the moment where the U.S. has to commit to go in. Don't forget, Eric, they said almost the same things over Iraq. They said the same things over Afghanistan. I know that. And I would say we've got to be very cautious.
Different than no weapons of mass destruction here yet, but they're on the doorstep of that. Congressman, I agree with you completely. We have complete air superiority over Tehran, over the whole country of Iran right now. Let Israel finish the job, support them all the way. Agree with that. You appreciate your time, Congressman Andy Biggs. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, folks, we're just days away from what we've been talking about this on this show for 3 months now. It's been dubbed the Rio Reset, the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar and our global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, just coming up next month, BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Iran, Brazil, and many more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering the value of those dollars. They've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of what? Gold. So how can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from these landmark shifts? Well, you diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which we are in right now. Get a free info kit on gold, on tax-sheltered gold and IRAs by texting the word America to 989898. July 6th marks a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. That group, BRICS, plus the others that want to be involved. So you have to arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text America, the word America, to the number 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. I certainly do myself. Before we head to break, I want to remind you about the podcast and YouTube page, both updated daily. You can hear the show, tons of other content. Just subscribe one of those there. They're always going to be free. By the way, I don't know if you have it, guys. Let's do some phone calls. We have a voicemail number. There it is, 888-601-0032. Let me know what you think. Say whatever you want, but beware what you say may be used against you on this show in the upcoming days. Just have some fun, keep it clean, and let us know what you think about regime change, MAGA, Trump, Tucker Carlson arguing. What's going on here? Let me know. We're going to play some of the fun ones. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes.
Some of the people in the base don't want a long-term war. They're afraid that we're going to get into a long-term war. We're not looking for a long-term war. We're looking, I only want one thing. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's it. I'm not looking long-term, short-term. And I've been saying that for 20 years. I've been saying it as a civilian who got a lot of publicity. People would cover it. Very simply, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's it. It's not a question of anything else. And if you did, you wouldn't have much of a country because they would use it on us and would use it on other people, and they'd be a terror all over the world.
Well, there's Donald Trump wearing the rare white Make America Great hat again. Brian Glenn was there. That was him asking that great question. Let's bring him in. RAV Chief White House Correspondent Brian Glenn. Great question, by the way. And by the way, that question made the rounds all over social media. You're getting it done, BG. You're getting it done. Tell us a little bit about that question. And,
thank you.
And what your feeling and sense is, what the Commander-in-Chief is thinking and going to do.
Well, Eric, as always, thanks for having me on. That question was really in response to what we're all seeing on X and on social media about this huge, I guess, divide within the base of whether or not you have some that want nothing to do what's going on, and you have some that others that feel like President Trump just said, we cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So that question was to address, and that question was a piggyback off of a CNN reporter who asked a variance of that question, but kind of got shut down. And so I just picked up the ball and said, look, there is a kind of a split between the base, ones that support it and ones that don't. But, we all, at the end of the day, we don't want a nuclear weapon. I also think it's very interesting, Eric, that the left does not allow dialogue within their own party. Okay, they shut it down. We often have disagreements within our party, within the base, and we have conversations about it. We discuss our differences, but at the end of the day, we all come together to support the president. No one's leaving President Trump over this issue. Let's make crystal clear on that. The base is going to stay strong in support of President Trump, whether or not they like what we're doing or whether they don't, and are completely against it. But the left does not allow any dialogue at all on their issues. They shut them all down. Yeah, it's a great point. And I think a lot of people, especially, again, I watch the Gitter chat, I watch the Rumble chat, I watch X, and they get lit up. You and I, our conversation, whatever, the other day, maybe it was Monday or maybe it was Friday, where they got lit up at us a little bit, like, how can you guys not get on board to annihilate Iran off the face of the earth? Well, we support, I'll speak for myself, I support President Trump, whatever he does. Sometimes I don't like some of the things he does, tariffs, okay, but I support him, and I hope it works out. And I'll support him, whatever he does here, too. I don't love the idea of getting involved in a war, but we will support him. The question is, it's the folks who are fighting, like this Tucker Carlson on one side and Mark Levin and Hannity on the other, and they're just going at it. For me, that's what I don't want to happen, because that gives the left a way out. They were buried in the corner, no popularity. Their numbers were tanking. They had no leadership. They had no platform. They were dead. They were DOA, folks. And then all of a sudden, there's a split within really strong Trump supporters, and it breathes new life into them, so to speak. No, you're right. And President Trump even mentioned his stance on Iran is even bringing in independents and some Democrats that just absolutely feel like Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. So it does bring in some people from the middle and from the left as well. But I agree, some of the viciousness that's happening within our party is not good. But I still say this, at the end of the day, are they going to all of a sudden start voting for Democrats now because they disagree with President Trump on this? No, they're going to stay strong. They're going to support MAGA. And, the base is so together 99% of the time. And I love that example that you brought up, Eric. Remember, you were not a big tariff guy, and you were very out in the open. You didn't like the tariffs. But you said, look, at the end of the day, President Trump's, I want him to be successful. I want this country to be successful. And so I'm going to support it, even though you didn't like it. I totally respect the fact that you said that, because a lot of people were so pro-tariffs that if you even spoke out against it, they were like, what? You mean you don't want us to succeed in life? Like, what? You don't want us to make more money? Like, but you understood. And you have these conversations, and that's why dialogue like this is so important. You know who else respects it? Not only the folks watching who really have open minds and hearts, the Trump administration. I was out there saying I don't like the idea of a tariff, but you know what? I trust Trump, and let's go. America first. Let's get her done. Feel the same way about this. Here's my issue with this. It's like I'm guessing you are too, you can weigh in, but I am very much, and have been since day one, against getting involved in foreign wars. I was never a fan of Bush and weapons of mass destruction, regime change in Iraq. Never was a fan of that. Pushed back. Yeah. But here's the other one. I was a very aggressive anti-Ukraine funding guy.
I find it very, very difficult to be that against helping out Ukraine when they're getting slaughtered by Russians, and then all of a sudden turn around and say, let's wipe Iran off the face of the earth. I think they should get rid of the nukes and bomb them. Regime change, great, but not us. That's all. Just not us, Brian.
Yeah. I understand. And you know what would have been interesting if President Trump would have stayed at the G7 and Zelensky was scheduled to be there, I believe, today, if I'm not mistaken. So, or no, that would have been yesterday. Yeah, it would have been there yesterday. And I'm sure those conversations would have came up as well. Look, I'm with you. No foreign wars, no boots on the ground. We're past all that. The whole Bush era of just bombing everybody just for the sake of bombing them and putting, tens of thousands of troops around the world in one place to fight a war. I don't want that. I don't think any of us want that. But if it makes the world a safer place and we can do it in a way where, and this is one of my first questions that came up, and I don't think it made the social media rounds, is I asked President Trump at the top of his press conference that he's been very, I think, compassionate towards the Iranian people, giving them a heads up to get out of Tehran. So, and my question was going to be, what is your message for the people of Iran? Because let's make no mistake about it. The people of Iran is very different than the government in Iran. And I don't think President Trump has any desire to kill innocent people in Iran. That's not his intention. He doesn't want that. He just wants to take out the nuclear facility, just like the Israeli government does. But I think we need to continue to keep the people of Iran in our prayers, because Eric, I mean, they're caught up in a horrible government. It's a brutal dictatorship over there, and I think organically they need to have some type of revolution. It's
going to end, Brian. It's going to end. They cannot be religious fanatics forever and call for the annihilation of everyone that's not, a believer in the Muslim is in Islam. It's going to end at some point. That the 40 million people in Iran will rise up. They should be doing it now, but at some point, and maybe this moment, maybe Trump's right. This moment, I just deep in my heart, I don't think Trump wants to go to war. I've known the guy a long time. He's always said no foreign wars. I just believe that this whole show of force, moving 3 aircraft carrier support units to the Middle East and in Europe area, I think this is all a show of force to kind of move Iran to the point where they come to the bargaining table for real, and not this BS that they've been doing with Biden and Obama for the last 15, 20 years. Quick thought before we got, if you want to do it, we can talk about the large, what do they call it? I'll use the nicer term, the lifting that happened at the White House today.
Yeah, you mean the flagpole, right?
Flagpole.
It's great. Which, by the way, the flagpole, here's some stats for you, goes 9 feet underground and is filled with sand around the base of it underground. It adds stability, soil, dirt, erodes the content of the flagpole, so sand's much better to use. He loved it. He loved to talk about the flagpole. It's something he's wanted to do for a while. He did it. He's going to another one on the North Lawn as well. Plus, Eric, he is going to build that big, beautiful ballroom soon. I asked him about that as well as we were standing there. He showed me in the direction that he was going to build that ballroom. It's going to be spectacular. President Trump, no doubt about it, is leaving this country better than he came in, and also is going to leave the White House better looking than it was before he showed up.
He loves those flags. He remember when he grabbed the flag at CPAC? But more importantly, before he was even president, he put up a major flag at Mar-a-Lago, and Palm Beach was fining him. They were fining him like $1,000 a day, and he said, I don't care, and kept going it until he became president. And then he had that fix. He had that monster flag that's on the front of Mar-a-Lago. Check it out next time. That was actually violating the Palm Beach height restrictions. Got to go. Be safe. Drive carefully, and we'll see you again soon, folks. We'll be back.
See you.
2.5 minutes. there it is. Is it Ben or Mad Dog? Mad Dog, you on the Voice of God, Ben?
It's Mad Dog.
Mad Dog, a little quiet skies over Tel Aviv this time. Couple nights ago, or a couple days ago, night in Tel Aviv, where the skies were kind of lighting up, weren't they?
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is a live shot from Tel Aviv right now.
An interesting take. A little quiet. Let's bring in continue the conversation on the Israel-Iran conflict. Joining me now is the Co-Secretary General of the Parliamentary Group, Dr. Walid Faris. Walid, really good to get you back on, especially now with what's going on. You've been hearing the discussion. You know, you're up to speed on all that. Our folks are up to speed as well. Tell us where we are on eliminating the nuclear threat from Iran, regime change with Iran, and what you think Trump is doing, what he's going to do.
It has a little history that we need to remind our audience very, very quickly. The Trump administration came a few months ago, but the disasters have been going on with the Obama and then Biden administrations for 12 years. Remember, they have allowed this regime to start in 2009 when there were millions of Iranians asking Obama, are you with us or are you with them? And then other revolts happened in Iran. But at the same time, the problem is that the Khomeini regime, that's the Islamist regime, the real name of the Islamist regime in Iran, has been developing precisely this nuclear weapon, have been also funding 5-6 militias, have been behind this October 7, and have been also trying to penetrate our country all the way up to attempt to kill our president. So for sure, we're not dealing with Sweden or New Zealand in Iran. We're dealing with the jihadi regime, the most powerful jihadi regime. Now, the answer to that is that the president asked the Israelis not to do anything for 60 days to give a last chance. That was not the one before last. That was the last chance for the regime to come and accept the deal that President Trump and his envoys have been preparing. So what we have noted was that they were stretching in time. They were saying, hey, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year. Why? To cover up for the preparations. And the Israeli clock is different than the American clock. They are close. They are immediately threatened. So on the 61st day, my friend, Israel launched its operation. It's surgical strike. While the regime, the Islamic regime, is sending missiles, it's like the Nazis over London. The Israelis are surgically taking out component of that program, but also they're doing something more. They are eliminating some of the heads of the agencies, of the the forces that are behind these problems. Now, and I conclude here quickly, the president is making a choice, and that choice is you lost your opportunity. That's for the regime, but I can still hear you. I can still listen to you. While on the other hand, we are supporting the Israelis defensively. We are helping them with the counter missile in the skies from the Mediterranean. We have all what it takes if there is an order to go and do more. And the next few days are going to be very important.
Well, I'm glad you said what you said. You started this with talking about Obama and Biden, and yesterday's monologue talked to exactly that. Weak presidents essentially create wars. I will say this, in early 2023, Obama and Blinken sent $6 billion back to Iran. And they said, don't worry, we have control over the money. It can only be used for humanitarian aid. Within a few months, they realized they had no control over the money. And then October 7, 2023, a few months after that, 1,400 Israelis slaughtered, likely with some of the money that we gave back to them. I'm willing to make that leap, that tie. Are you?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, let's go back quickly and visit the actual mothership, which was the Iran deal, which was signed by then President Obama. And in 2015, 2016, he allowed the regime to receive $150 billion. What sane mind could give all that money to a regime that has been practicing terror since 1979? Then we realized one thing, that behind that deal, there was a transaction. This is what the American public has missed, and I hope that Congress will go back and then research what has happened. Out of the $150 billion that went to the regime, guess what? You have people who profit from it. 10% came back. 10% came back. That's the Iran lobby that we're talking about, that has been able to influence the academia, media, the whole 300,000 activists and militants we have been seeing since October 7 on our campuses. Where is that money coming from? from Switzerland. It's coming from the Iran deal. So while the regime was actually fooling us, penetrating our institutions, arming itself, preparing itself. Yes, they did October 7, but their goal is way beyond October 7. That's why this is a moment now in history. Regime change. We're not talking about Sweden, or we're not talking about countries that elect their leaders. This is a regime that has been there nonstop for 79. However, changing the regime should not be at the hands of the United States. Not even at the hands of Israel, at the hands of the Iranian people. And what Iranian opposition are telling me, all you have to do, you Americans, stop funding that regime. And you just mentioned now the most important, most recent act that the Biden administration did was to send $6 to $7 billion in 2023. And yes, you're right. Some of that money, which means the money that was sent to Hamas, was used in this operation. That's why we have to stop it, because there will be more billions of dollars, maybe up to $1 trillion from this regime. That's the negotiations. And imagine what would that do to terrorism, not just against Israel, against Europe, against the United States.
It's incredible. Between Biden and Obama, you point out the JCPOA, that was the deal that you're talking about, which basically opened the door for them to enrich uranium. They played this game where we signed a deal, we send them $150 billion, and they were going to open up their facilities so that we can inspect, and they never did that, did they?
Absolutely not. First of all, they did not meet the conditions. But then they will come to the brokers. See, there is a whole history of it. The brokers are the people who are going in between us, between the regime and us. And every time they don't apply anything, that's the regime. Those brokers and advisors will come to the sitting leader in the White House and say, no, of course they're going to implement all these policies. Just give them time. That's how the regime uses time. But there is no more time for that regime, because if they get to that nukes, and I'm not just concentrating on the nukes, I'm concentrating on the terror networks. The terror networks, if they come inside our countries, they could hit our nukes right here at home.
Yeah, no, we're going to have to leave it there, Waleed. It's clearly going to continue. We'll bring you back ASAP. Thank you. Appreciate your time, Waleed Faris.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go to break, very quickly, throw up that screen again. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear it, because you can call this number. Remember, you may be on television tomorrow or the next day, 888-601-0032, so keep it clean. Keep it, as O'Reilly used to say, keep it pithy, meaning get to your point real fast. See if we can get some of your comments on TV tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Back in 2.5 minutes. Well, for over 70 years, the U.S. has been fighting a battle to keep the deadly parasite known as the New World screwworm out of the country. Yep, screwworm. Interesting. Recently, it's been reported that efforts have failed, and it's only a matter of time before the deadly parasite makes its way back into the United States. Joining me to discuss is Chief of Disaster and Emergency Medicine at the Wellness Company. By the way, Wellness Company, folks, is doing great things. Let's bring in Dr. Kelly Victory. Okay, Doc, first, what the heck is a screwworm, and how bad is it? As bad as it sounds?
Well, thanks very much for having me, Eric. The screwworm is a specific type of parasitic fly that had been eradicated from the United States back in 1960. It's found primarily in the tropics, places in Central America, and in Mexico. And the problem with this fly is that it can cause tremendous tissue damage, not only to animals, but also to humans. What happens is the female flies land on open wounds on an animal. However they sustain that wound, lay eggs, the larvae or the maggots hatch, and they burrow into that flesh. That the name screwworm is because of the way that it burrows into the flesh of the animal that it's affecting. And if it isn't recognized early and debrided and treated, it can cause significant tissue injury and also include death. As I said, we had not had any issue with this in the United States since the 1960s. There is some concern, however, right now because of outbreaks in Mexico and the transport of potentially infected cattle from Mexico into the U.S. And I know that certain states, including Texas, have put a moratorium at this point on any cattle coming in from Mexico for that reason.
A couple questions there. So the difference is this is a parasite, not a virus. Could it be as deadly and widespread as a virus, number one? And number two, if this parasite does infect the cattle or the food supply, can it jump to human?
Well, it can affect humans. There's no question. However, you would have to have, really not recognize that you had an infected wound and do nothing about it for it to cause any significant harm. Humans, have always been able to get wounds infected with maggots, unfortunately, if they aren't using good hygiene and aren't watching what's going on. I don't think that this is something that's of significant concern to humans. It could be a concern in the cattle industry for certain if they had a significant outbreak. In the past, the way they have treated it, interestingly, is by releasing mass quantities of sterile male flies that then subsequently mate with the females and have larvae that are not viable. But that takes some time to enact. So I think that they're making the right moves right now at the USDA and elsewhere to say we are not going to allow any cattle from these areas where we know there have been outbreaks until we're sure we've gotten arms around it. I don't think this is something that's going to be of significant concern in this country.
Dr. Kelly, along those lines, making the right moves, Secretary Kennedy, he fired all 17 members of what they're calling the Vaccine Advisory Committee. You think this is a good move?
I do. I absolutely do. To be clear, Bobby Kennedy did clear house at ACIP. That's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. It's a group that's a federally funded and supported group that's been in place for decades. They are the group of individuals who advise the CDC on which vaccines make it onto the childhood vaccination schedule. What Bobby found out, and it's been clear, is that the vast majority of the people who have been on that committee have egregious conflicts of interest. Many of them held stock in pharmaceutical companies, had patents on pharmaceuticals, had coincident advisory roles or consulting jobs with pharmaceutical companies. And if you've ever watched, as I have horrifically, some of the actual footage of their advisory panel, how they came to the conclusions that they came to add a vaccine to the childhood schedule with absolutely zero safety data behind it, where people on the advisory panel are saying, well, what do we know about this impact, or what do we know about the risk to this group? And the answer was, we actually don't know yet. And they went ahead and approved it anyway. So the idea that Robert Kennedy Jr. has cleared house, he is rebuilding that panel, not only hopefully to reestablish some scientific integrity, but as importantly, to rebuild the confidence that the American people have in these groups that are advising the CDC on what we inject our children with.
Dr. Kelly, always really informative when we have you on. Appreciate you, and we really appreciate the Wellness Company as well. Good talking to you again.
Thanks for having me.
I'll see you again soon. All right, folks, before we move on to anything else, something needs to be said right here and right now. Liberals, anti-Trumpers, and whoever else is out there doubting or critiquing Donald Trump's stance on Iran, I want to tell you all to understand how deeply we are hated by these insane people. Here's their entire parliament chanting death to America. Not just people, their entire government, parliament, chanting death to America, a battle cry that pretty much targets each and every one of you and me. Watch. Yeah. There needs to be a regime change. I just don't think we should be the ones doing it. Let Israel do it. They got it. We'll help them out. Let them do it. What a time to be alive in America right now. Tensions from way back on the campaign trail followed Trump right into office, and the recent news cycle has only amplified the animosity between the left and the right, political left and right in the United States. Democrats like Chucky Schumer make a living off of our fears. And here's Chucky blaming Republicans for all the violence that his side is creating around the country.
And let me just say one final thing in augmentation of what Amy said. The increase in violence, threats of violence against members, didn't happen by accident. It happened because of the coarseness of the debate, but beyond that, the kind of rhetoric that we hear some in the hard right use, which at least some people think gives them a permission structure to do very evil things.
You know, it kind of started with all this pro-Palestinian marches and the protests and the riots on our college campuses. And then it progressed to, well, we hate everything that Trump is doing. And when Elon Musk joined Trump with Doge, remember they were burning Elon Musk's Tesla dealerships. They were burning them. They were scratching them. They were spray painting liberals who were buying electric cars because they were greenies. They were buying Elon's electric cars and they were spray painting those. They flipped sides because Elon was pro-Trump. They do everything that Trump does. They take the opposite side of it. So understand what these liberals are all about. All this protest that you're seeing right now, anything they're protesting what's going on in the Middle East, our involvement, this is all stemming from liberals being activists, protesters, and rioters. They're the ones hitting cops with bricks. It's not conservatives, it's liberals. So these knuckleheads, I'll use a nice term, these knuckleheads like AOC, Chuck Schumer, the rest of them, all of them, Hakeem Jeffries, blaming Trump for this or blaming MAGA for this is absolutely ridiculous. It's just gaslighting. You know it's you guys. You know it's your side. You're the side of violence and destruction. Stop it. All right, we're going to break and we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. I'm not sure what's on the backside of it, but we'll figure it out. Just come to us. Come to us. This is more important. I haven't seen this guy in better part of a week. Let's bring him in, Mr. Stephen Bannon. But let me just say this. Stephen Bannon, this is
Hold it, hang on. You were supposed to meet me in Butterworth. Were you in town?
Steve, I was in town. I called. I texted you. You didn't answer me. I said, let me take you to dinner, have a drink at Butterworth.
Well, hold it.
And then our friend Raheem said he wasn't going to be there, so.
No, because during the time of war, I hunkered down in the bunker. But you got to give me more than a couple. Here's how bowling works. Here's how bowling works. I'm going to tell you how bowling works. Bowling's the kind of guy, he comes in town, has the whole thing planned, and he texts you like 4 PM. Hey, what do you want to grab a drink? Because what happens is the thing he's got lined up is falling out.
No,
so you're like backup to the. No, you're the backup to the backup plan.
Cameron, ask Cameron if I told him I was going to be in town the day before. Ask Cameron. He'll tell you. I gave him a heads up. Okay. So listen, I was going to open this segment with, is this the Steve Bannon that's on the top of the Daily Mail right now, the main story, or is this the Steve Bannon that's on top of media? You're the most important person in me. Everyone wants to know are you going to be on The View tomorrow?
No. Hang on. I want to tell, my agent told me this. It said they noticed an inflection point when I started doing the hard changeover from the Eric Bolling show. So I'm getting a little of that 5 magic. Right?
Oh,
you've laid some hands on me. So
I'll tell you when it happened. I'm going to tell you exactly when it happened. I'm going to tell you exactly here's when it happened. I was with Cuomo on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. And at the end of the segment, we were talking about MAGA, and I said, "You're the true north on MAGA. You're the Don of the MAGA world." And Cuomo and I were going back and forth about it, and I pulled out the shirt, Steve Bannon's my spirit animal, and all of a sudden, everyone picked it up. Like, Bannon is MAGA, and you're, brother, you're crushing it. You're crushing it.
Stop. Thank you. No, the president is our, but Cuomo always introduced me, says that you're the spirit animal of MAGA, so I appreciate that.
He stole it.
Eric, thank you so much.
He stole it. Hey,
stole it. Lift it.
Help us out here. We're going through this whole, where's MAGA? Is true MAGA behind bombing Iran? Is true MAGA behind Trump no matter what? Is true MAGA America first? We don't want to touch, and we want to send our kids into war anywhere. MAGA guru, help us out. Where is true MAGA North?
No, I think, listen, as you know, with President Trump, he's weighing alternatives, weighing options. Look, he said today that a couple things. Tucker called him and apologized. He's all good with Tucker. You got when he's putting up the flag, which Bolling, you got to understand, how genius is that? We've had the White House since, 18, when Dolly Madison was there. Even she didn't think of, we've never had a big flagpole with a massive American flag. It's just so incredible. So President Trump is weighing and measuring his options, and clearly he's getting a lot of pressure from the outside. We are, people are adamant, hey, we don't want to get into another war for the simple reason is that this is what led to your rise to power, and you're doing so much that's so great, and we got so much to do. We know how you're going to get tangled up in just the country. But, right, I think what you have to weigh and measure your options when you make a decision, come out like only Trump can do, explain it to people, walk people through it. The MAGA movement's going to back President Trump if he walks through just his logic, how he came to the decision. And I happen to believe right now that it's not a foregone conclusion. It's not a foregone conclusion. We should go through more information, more details, and at some point in time, with polling or whatever, show President Trump what the feeling is, because these are his hardest core followers. These are the people that really came on board the earliest because we want to get out of the foreign wars. We wanted to seal the border. We wanted to confront China, bring manufacturing jobs back. Those were his 3, what he originally ran on. And so his most loyal followers, and if you see, it's guys like Gates, it's guys like Marjorie Taylor Greene, all the hardest of the hardcore of MAGA. Is kind of uniting this. So we have a lot of work to do over the next 72 hours. Yeah, but we'll do it.
Is this fair to say that in the same way that I don't love tariffs, I still want Trump to win. I want it to be right. I want America to succeed. I also don't want to have involvement in foreign wars other than support, even if it has to be financial. This is one I guess we can get behind. And still, is this a fair assessment? Because I think if you trust Trump, it's going to turn out okay, even if he's taking paths that may not look the right way right now. Fair?
Fair. I do think, of course, tariffs, we're right in that and you're wrong, but it's different. So because we're right on
the jury's out of that. I think the jury's still out on that, my friend. I'm not taking the L for that yet. I'm not taking
No, hold on. By the way, he's still a neoliberal neocon, but that's okay. He's in his rehab program from Fox. We got to repurpose Bolling. No, this is so fundamental to the movement, and he's got so much going on that's so great. And people want to see that succeed. The only way we save this country is with President Trump and his leadership. That's why this thing that's so foundational and fundamental, and I think it's the Israeli. My mantra right now, as I said, they should finish what they started. They started this, and yes, President Trump has been adamant. We've been adamant. The mullahs, the Ayatollah in that crowd can't get nuclear weapons. We happen to think through economic warfare because when we put sanctions on in the first term, they almost overthrew the government. Not totally, but they had, and remember in 22, they had people in the streets for like 5 days. Right? So these things are doable either through coercive diplomacy, which I think you're seeing now. President Trump just said they called him up. He's thinking of bringing him to the White House. There's a long way to go before they start dropping bombs there. And we're going to break it down tonight in the 5 o'clock show. The Israelis should finish what they started. The United States is here. We don't need to bomb tomorrow like we didn't need to bomb last Thursday. That is just not true. We did not need to go. The Israelis did not need to go. There was no pressure that had to happen last Thursday. That could have been developed much more so the people can get behind it. Right now, most Americans walk around going, what are we doing in Iran?
Only a few seconds. Here's my stance with this whole divide, whether there's one there or not. We had the Democrats painted in the corner. They were failing. They didn't have policy that the American people wanted. They didn't have a leader. And then this split when Levin is arguing with Tucker and Hannity is on one side and Bannon's on the other. Doesn't it light their fire again a little bit? We don't want that. Let's put them out. Let's put them down the way we hope Israel puts down Iran while they have the chance.
Right. But I don't want to put them down by agreeing with those guys. I think their behavior in Fox, they should be. And remember, they're not MAGA at all. They turned on Trump in 2021. Let's tell it like it is.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
Murdoch put in there. You know this.
Well, see, I'm not sure they were ever Trump. I'm not sure from day one they were ever Trump.
You know, I don't want to get into the behind-the-scenes things, but you could tell stories for hours about what the reality was there. And Murdoch was very upfront. He was never for Trump. And those guys in 21, when this audience hunkered down and joined the precinct strategy and got everything done, this audience was his hardest core followers. They had Ron DeSantis on every night. You talk about Bibi doing, this thing of Bibi over the last 30 years that it's only, 12 months away and they're playing it all the time. You could go do Levin of all the times he had Ron DeSantis and all the times that Fox had Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, right. And they promoted them all in 21 and 22.
Well, in 16 they wanted Jeb Bush. In 20, they wanted Ron DeSantis. There's no question. They've never been. They take Trump and hold their nose because they know Trump brings a massive audience. I'm eating into your time. I'm guessing because we have another handover, you're going to have some massive media opportunity tomorrow. The View or something. I don't know what. ABC.
I'm giving you credit, Bolling. You're more than a lucky charm. You've got media stroke. People pay attention. You're doing the hard changeover. Not only do we keep the audience and make the audience even bigger in the 5 o'clock hour, but I've now become even more relevant to the media. So thank you very much.
Have a good show. Next time in town, we'll sit together.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, can you give me more than 2 hours notice?
Talk to Cameron.
Seriously, next time, just because somebody blows you off, just give me a day.
Since you want to throw me under the bus, on live television, did you ever open the gift that I sent you? Did you ever open the box that's sitting at the Bannon War Room Studios?
Hang on. That hasn't gone through security. Hasn't signed off on it.
It's safe. All right, brother. Have a good show.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Okay, we got a massive cold open. We're going to get into today as only the War Room could do. Let's let it roll.
Doesn't take out Fordo, for example. Has it really damaged Iran's nuclear program as much as it says that it wants to?
Well, as that piece demonstrates, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very alarmist for a long time about the Iranian nuclear program. And obviously, in hindsight, a lot of that alarm was exaggerated. But I think it is the case that the Iranian nuclear program has accelerated since President Trump's disastrous decision in 2018 to exit the Iranian nuclear accord. At that point, we know that the Iranian breakout time, the amount of time they would take to have enough fissile material for a bomb, was over a year. Now, I think everybody agrees, including U.S. intelligence, it's down to a week or two. I think the question mark is, how long would it take them to actually weaponize that material? And that's, I think, where you have a dispute between the Israelis, who are saying they could weaponize very quickly, and the U.S. intelligence community, which is saying it would take a longer period of time. But I think you're onto a key point here, Abby, which is what happens if the Israelis do not, or the U.S. or somebody does not take out the Fordow site. And the reality is the Iranian nuclear program will pretty much continue despite all the damage that the Iranians are suffering in this Israeli air campaign. So that's why. But keep in mind, even if Fordow is taken out, that doesn't mean that Iran will never be able to get a nuclear weapon, because the know-how, probably a lot of the enriched uranium, all that stuff will remain still in Iranian hands. But clearly, Fordow is a very big deal. And I think what President Trump has to calculate is it worth going after Fordow, given the risk that the Iranians, who have so far been refraining from attacking U.S. bases or shipping in the region, given the risk that they will escalate. And so, you see all these U.S. bases, which are very close to Iran, and in fact, much closer than Israel. And so, Israel is about 1,000 miles from Iran. These bases are much closer, so Iran has a lot more missiles that they can shoot at them. They have drones. They also have the capability to sow mines in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. So there's a lot more damage they can probably do even in their weakened state. And so that's what I think President Trump has to balance here. Is it worth the risk of going after Fordow if it means getting the U.S. involved in the middle of these hostilities?
Please answer questions about whether you are moving closer, or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the...
It's in Genesis, but... So you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it, and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on. Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yet nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation the God's referring to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But just like, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle is there.
This is silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
believe Israel. That's what God was talking about in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people,
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is.
What do you say to the supreme leader of Iran says that they will not
Say good luck.
What is the end game?
Say it?
I know the patience run out.
It's already run out. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
You can take out.
Yeah, they had 60 days and a big, 60 days, plenty of time. And they made a mistake. Honestly, they made a mistake. Their country's in ruins. So many people are dead that shouldn't be dead. It's a very sad thing.
Really, as far as a lot of people that I've been talking to here, they really do want to see the United States get involved. They want to see the United States finish the job. One of the reasons why Benjamin Netanyahu keeps getting